Hey guys, this is a comparison of three 85mm lenses that are the Samyang, the Sony GM, and the Sigma Art. Let's do this. So here we have the first example. I'm going to be starting with some building shots that I did across the street. This is going to be a comparison of the three, the Sony GM, the Samyang, and the Sigma Art. This is the focus point was about here where it says BE, even though it's a flat building, so obviously all that focus plane should be the same for across the building, but just so you know where I focused. Once again, this is like of several shots, like at least 6 to 10 shots per lens, and this is the best of each of them. Some were more consistent, like the Sigma Art and the GM. The Samyang was a bit more spotty in the how good it was getting focus from shot to shot, but still was pretty high, just not as high as the other two. So in any case, I rather do this like this. I prefer to show like the whole image and then swap. I feel it's easier because you're looking at it on the center of your monitor instead of like on a side, on an edge of the monitor. So hopefully this works. But you can still download the images from the description so you can check on your own. Anyways, here we go, the Sony GM, and this is the Samyang. Besides the obvious color cast on the Samyang lens, you can see how the GM is actually sharper. And again, this is the best of several shots for each lens. So you can see a lot more detail on the textures here on the paint on the building. Now, how does it compare to the Sigma Art? Pretty close, I would say. Having a hard time, but if I had to say, maybe the GM has a slight edge in the center area here. Maybe, it's very hard to tell, but definitely both are more detailed than the Samyang is on this particular shot. On this particular kind of test on a flat building. Let's go to this edge and see how it looks. So we had the GM, the Samyang, and this will be the GM, and this will be the Sigma. So definitely the Sigma takes the win here, and you can see how it gets sharper when I jump from the GM to the Sigma and then to the Samyang. One thing you will notice across those shots is that the art, Sigma Art, is slightly shorter than 85. See how the GM, the Samyang are pretty much the same, and the art is always a bit shorter than the rest. But anyways, let's keep looking around this different sections of this image just to give you across. Here we got the bricks section here of the wall, how it compares to the Samyang and the GM. Again, I clearly see that the GM is actually superior to the Samyang. Just to remind you, this is the latest copy of the GM that I got very recently. I got it after I did the first part of the Samyang review test. So this is a better copy than the one that I was using before, and it shows. I think it's definitely showing an advantage over the Samyang. When you jump to the art, though, the art clearly is the best. I mean, you can see how well defined this section is. This is this Sony GM, and the art, it's very, very easy to tell the difference between the two. So once again, the art takes the #1 spot. Samyang will be third and GM will be second. A bit more here on this area and see if there's any difference around that area. Seems to be the same, with the art always giving an insanely sharp image. It's ridiculous how good that lens is. We got a GM here. The Samyang, actually it's sharper here than this copy. So look at that, Samyang coming back. And it's pretty much, yeah, the art once again wins. And how about here with the open sign, or maybe this tiny corner with the LO, the GM, the Samyang, and the art. And once again, the art is the winner, with the GM just beating the Samyang. And here we got the GM. See how it goes all the way across. It looks pretty sharp. The Samyang definitely not as sharp. And then finally the Sigma, which beats all of them. As you can see how much sharper and detailed this is. You can see all the texture work on the wall. Not quite there with the GM. And there's a little bit of bokeh here that we can compare if you wanna. This is some polish on the back. The Samyang looks good. The GM seems a bit nervous there, and the Sigma seems to be giving the most of the blur. So pretty impressive showing by the Sigma, I will say. But this is just one test to begin, and you can see the vignetting on the Samyang is going to be higher than the others. So you see the Samyang gets darker, the GM it's definitely better, and the Sigma is the best of all. Let's try another sample. Remember to download the images, check them on your end, and just make your decision. This is basically all of these lenses are going to be great, guys. You can do great images with all these lenses. You can do it with the 1.8, you can do it with the Baptist, you can do it with a Sigma 56 1.4 on a crop sensor. Any lens, you can do great images if you get the composition, the lighting, the posing all correct, if it's a person. So, but if you want to be able to crop, you want to be the most detailed, you want to print in the best sharpness possible, then this is why we do this. Or if you just love gear like I do. So let's check here the GM. About the classic sign is where I try to get the focus. So we're going with the Sigma Art, the GM, Sigma Art, and GM. They're very close. And the Samyang, yeah, the Samyang definitely doesn't give the same amount of detail. But once again, on its own, its performance is really good. Like when you evaluate it on its own, it's doing really good. But we're comparing to other lenses, so it kind of makes the differences stand out more. Let's see on the right side of the screen here, this antique sign. We got the Samyang. Yes, so first Samyang, Sony GM, and Sigma Art. So we got Samyang. This is the Sony GM. Definitely a slight increase in detail here, and then the obvious advantage of the Sigma Art. I mean, you can tell from there, from here to here, it's quite a big difference. You can see that all the way to the edges, you still have the sharpness with the Sigma Art, where the GM starts dropping earlier, and the the Samyang even earlier. What about this signs here? Yeah, Sigma GM is actually really good there, and Samyang is pretty weak on that one. Let's see how about this card decal there. GM and Sigma a little bit better, Samyang the worst. Let's move to this here. We got the Samyang. See on the signs there. This is the GM. Back to the Samyang and the Sigma Art. So between the Sigma Art and the GM now, definitely the Sigma Art wins. And just in case you guys prefer this, let's try it like this, and let me know in the video, on the comments, if you prefer this split screen or you like me to just go full screen and swap between the images. But if you look in here, it's clear that the Sigma Art has the advantage, followed by the GM and then the Samyang. Let's see right here where this says cars. Now the Sigma Art is going to show more because it's a bit shorter than 85, as you can see. But you can still see how the contrast and the resolution is higher. So it goes Sigma Art, GM second, and Samyang third. And all the way to the corners, you can still see how sharp the art is. The GM is not as good, and the Samyang seems to be actually better than the GM here at the very top corner. I mean, I think they're all doing a great job, but when it comes to picking the best, to me the art keeps giving the best resolution of all three across the screen. Just here and there you'll get a slightly different situation. Once again, as you can see from the center of the image, when you drop down, it seems that the GM resolution drops faster. See how now it loses to the Samyang, while the Sigma still comes on top. So very interesting behavior of that particular copy of the GM. Let's move on to this one, which is not a very good photo because it's very kind of overexposed, but I just wanted something farther away. So this is a lot more distance from this building. And the focus point was about here where it says Granger, about that square area. So we got Sony GM in the center, Sigma on the left, and Samyang on the right. So let's see, let's move on to the left. And you can see here that the Samyang is blurry a little bit. The GM is better, and the Sigma art is the best. Let me show it this way just in case it's easier to see. Maybe not. So Samyang, take a look at this. GM and art, and you can see how sharp this lens is. Ridiculous. I'm blown away by it. I had the previous two copies that I tested were not even close to this, or it was just because of the issues with the autofocusing at that point with the A7R2 and the adapter. But whatever it wasn't close to this performance. So you can see this gate here. The GM looks really good, and the art once again looks the best. Remember to just download the images and just check them on your screen, full size. You know, you can find everything you want about them. Make sure that you look for every detail or anything that is important to you on the image. So here's a couple of images with models. This one's only between the Samyang and the GM. I didn't have the art at that point. I tried to get the same pose, but it's not quite identical, but hopefully it will be helpful. So this is the Sony GM. And this is the Samyang. Now you can see how nervous the background can be on the Samyang depending on what is on the back. So definitely you can tell that the Sony is softer, more controlled. Let's see some of this foliage here. See how much smoother the Sony looks versus the Samyang. And I have a specific photo that I wanted to show you regarding that, and I'll show you later, which is one of the reasons I decided not to keep the Samyang, and then I was gonna keep the GM until I found that art, and the art just won me over. Not because it's necessarily the better than the GM, but it does have bokeh that actually can match or beat the GM in some circumstances, and in others it will lose. But since 135 is my main focal range, I figured that I could sell the GM and use some of the cash to get the 135 GM instead. Then again, I have the 135 art, which is amazing, but I kind of want the extra accuracy and faster AF of the GM for that particular focal range. There's one more example here of the GM versus the Samyang. You got the bokeh side by side. You can see how smooth the GM looks, and the Samyang is a bit more nervous, and you can see the structure of the bokeh more. And one thing that looks here is how, for me, in this particular shot, this Sony just looks more ready to go from the photo. Now this is another photo that I did with any care in regards to how I normally work. This was just for a test. But if I were to pick a photo, this one looks kind of like more ready to go, and the rendition and the skin and everything. And this one not so much. Of course, there's a color cast and all that, so take that into consideration. But just like how it looks, this is how the photo looks overall. So you can see how the Samyang looks and the GM. Now, to my eyes, the GM seems to have like a bit more of a 3D pop, if you want to call it subject isolation, 3D look, whatever you want to call it, but it seems to have that one that makes me like this photo more than the other. Okay, this this one includes the Samyang. This is just kind of like a quick test that I did at the distance of the mountain here in front of my house, just to see how it will behave with the lenses. And you can see that the GM, this is about the area, focus area. The GM actually seems to be the sharpest in this particular shot. Now I only took like 3 shots here, so I don't have a lot of samples, so something could have gone wrong, but I have to say the GM seems to give the better detail on this particular shot in the center. The Sigma seems to be second and Samyang third, but when you move to the edges, we go back to the usual. Here's the Samyang. This is the GM, which I think does better than the Samyang, going back and forth. And of course, then the art just hits them all. I mean, this is ridiculous. Look at the detail on that side of the mountain. This is all wide open 1.4. But once again, download the photos and check yourself and let me know what you think. So now we got another model shoot that I did. Here we go. This is a few photos from that shoot, and she was just basically standing still for me to take the photo. She did an awesome job for that. So here we go, starting with the Sony GM. And now the Samyang, and you can see the color cast, which is an obvious tell that this is a Samyang. But I mean, I think it looks really good with the Samyang and the Sigma art. Now, one thing you will notice here is like some of the areas look soft, more softer on some areas than depending on the lens and the area. For example, this is the Samyang. You can always see that it has more structure, and the bokeh seems more nervous than the others. Now this is the GM, very soft comparison, and this is the Sigma art. Really, the Sigma art seems to be right there with the GM in that particular shot. Now let's scroll up here and go back to the GM. Now in this here, since the GM is getting more nervous, and the Samyang actually, the art looks actually smoother in that area. And when I show to the Samyang, once again it ends up third, but I mean, we're looking at 100% images here just to see how the bokeh looks. See, and this one, this side is different. This one, the GM seems to look softer than the Sigma art. So yeah, it's just interesting how they behave in different areas of the photo. See, GM, Samyang, back to GM, back to Samyang, and then the Sigma art. And if we scroll all the way down, we can see that the Samyang resolution here on the feet, the GM is up there, and the Sigma art seems to have the edge over the GM. Yes, definitely. And how does the photo look overall? Well, honestly, I think they look pretty equal. Obviously, you can tell that the Samyang is going to be less smooth in the background. The GM seems pretty smooth. First glance, I would say the art is my favorite, but nitpicking here within these two. So just for your sake, here we go. GM, Samyang, and Sigma. So you can definitely see the difference in bokeh smoothness, but I mean, either of these lenses is gonna do a great job. So let's move to a shot that is kind of like half body shot. So here we go, comparison between the three, starting from GM on the left, Samyang and Sigma last. So you can see some of the bokeh in the background, the GMs having the smoother one, Samyang always third when it comes to smooth background. But as we move to this side, some areas actually look smoother on the Sigma art than the Sony, which is one of the interesting things that I noticed with comparing these lenses, because I was expecting the Sony to always beat the GM, the Sigma, but that's not the case. For example, here you can see the Sony, and the art is actually smoother, while the Samyang is always on the third spot between these two, you know, monster lenses, which are a lot more expensive than the Samyang, so you have to consider that too. So when you consider that, it's definitely doing a great job keeping up with these, you know, two fantastic lenses from Sony and Sigma. Let's see how this tree trunk looks. So this is the Sony, and it is smoother than the Samyang a little bit. And this is the Sigma, and the Sigma wins in this one. Look at that. It's a bit smoother than the Sony to my eyes. If you see something different, do let me know. But when you go here on the side, you can see the vanish of the circular. Well, I don't even know why, because it's not using the blades, it's wide open. But anyways, it's a bit more circular on the GM and softer on the Samyang. Is the smallest. Of course, it's you have an 86mm filter thread on the Sigma Art versus 82, I believe, or 77 on the Sony. So pretty impressive. Oh, I forgot to show you something. In this particular shot, there was the sun was hitting on an angle that was kind of affecting, giving some sun glare. I decided to leave it like that because I wanted to see how the lenses will behave, even though they were all using their hoods. And as you can see, the Samyang was the one that got affected the most. You can see how the contrast is losing here, and look at the Sony GM did much better, but you can still see some flare. And when you jump to the Sigma Art, you get the jump in contrast from here to here, and it was just, you know, within seconds of the shoot. So there was not like a change on the sunlight, it was just how the lenses were able to handle it. You can see something interesting. There's like a small rainbow here that happens in the GM. Doesn't happen with the Samyang, but I think got affected quite a bit by the sun glare, and the Sigma R just did an awesome job. You know, different hood sizes, different coatings, or whatever it is, but just wanted to show you the real life results with using the lenses. And finally, let's do a very close-up shot here. This was at f4 for the only reason that the GM and the aperture ring was changed by accident, and I didn't notice, and then all of them ended up doing photos at f4. I honestly hate that aperture rings on the lenses because I don't have any need for them, and I accidentally keep changing them. But anyways, this is the GM, this is the Samyang, and the problem is the Samyang, I was having problems getting accurate focus from this distance. Of all the shots, very few were like sort of accurate, and the Art and the GM are very close. So yeah, they all did a great job there, except for the focusing issues with the Samyang. We got the Samyang there, the GM. Now, why the Samyang is able to focus closer or something, and it gives me, or I just framed it incorrectly probably. So that last shot is, don't take it very to a big determination of what you like between the lenses, because it was kind of like a last minute decision to do that super close-up shot. Regarding the bokeh that I mentioned before, let me bring this up. This is one of the main reasons I'm having problems keeping the lens Samyang, is because this is a Samyang. Look at how it renders this kind of bokeh nervous, and this is a Sigma. Now this is the kind of bokeh I like for my work. I don't enjoy this type of bokeh, like nervousness and all this structure and on the background. So that's what the main reasons I decided to send it back and then just keep the art. Once again, this doesn't happen in every photo. As you saw, some of the photos that I showed you earlier, it does a great job with the background. So it depends on what you're shooting, but I prefer having that extra smoothness on my work. And this is all shot with electronic first curtain shutter off, of course, because otherwise it will affect the shots and the rendition of the bokeh. And I wanted the test to be as perfect as possible comparing them. So for now, I'm gonna be just running some sample images that I took with the Samyang and some with the Sigma. While they are running, I'm gonna give you my impressions and final conclusions on the Samyang 85mm 1.4. But please do remember to download those images from the description, test on your end, and then just comment and let me know what you think, which one you feel that is the one that you would like to get if it's a 1.4. And the price also, I'm sure, is a factor. So for the price, the Samyang, I think, is a steal of a lens. I mean, but hopefully I still get a chance to test it in the future against the 85 1.8, but we shall see. Regarding the lens and my experience with it, I had actually 3 copies that I tested. One of them was completely off on autofocus. I don't know what happened with the lens, but it was totally off. I don't count that one. The other 2 were really very, very similar. One had a slightly worse right side than the other, but nothing major. So 2 out of 3 were good. Hopefully their track record will and quality testing will be good, so that you guys don't end up with bad copies. But for my personal preference and style of shooting, I couldn't quite enjoy the lens completely because of the bokeh rendition. It was a bit nervous for my taste. As you can see in some of the samples that I just posted, is not bad. It's just that compared to what I'm used to and the smoothness of the GM and the art, it's not exactly the type of lens that I will normally want for my work. But I'm sure there are a lot of people that will be more than happy with it, as the 1.8 Batis and the Sony 1.8 are very popular, and they won't have as much bokeh as the Samyang with the 1.4 aperture. So there's a market for this lens, and at $700, I think this should be a hot seller for Samyang. And I know they've been releasing some firmware updates, so hopefully they will keep improving on the autofocus. I only could test it on the A7R 3. I didn't have a chance to try it on A9 or something like that to see how it performs with the faster autofocus, but I'm guessing that it will do just fine. So overall, my impressions are very, very positive about this lens. I wish it didn't have the color cast, only because it saves me a little bit of time on editing, but not a big deal. In some shots, actually, the color cast gives it a nice tone to the image, so it's not a big problem for most of us guys that we do post-processing. Or you can just set up the white balance if you like, and that should help in camera as well. So IQ, it's great. Bokeh, it's very good. Not as good as the GM or the art, but it's good. The detail, it's there. And it doesn't quite give you this exact same sharpness away from the center as I'm getting from the art and the GM. There might be better copies out there than the ones that I tried. I don't know. But I know that the GM that I have is a very, very good copy. Well, I had because I sold it, but yeah, it was a really, really good copy. So against the first GM that I tested, the Samyang, it did better, and the Samyang did actually outperform the GM in many areas. So, it depends on what copy you get of the lens. So it gets my recommendation. If Samyang can keep improving on the consistency of the focus, I feel that the firmware that they have right now is very good. I get consistent eye focus in sharpness, and unlike the 35mm 1.4 that they have, where I have to go back to firmware 02, which gave me the most consistent autofocus results, because the latest 2 firmwares were very spotty on the autofocus performance. But I digress. Going back to the Samyang 85 1.4, I give it a thumbs up. So just to let me know what you think, and comment thumbs up or thumbs down, and if it's down, let me know why, so I can improve. And please share the video. I'm hoping to get to the 1,000 subscribers this year, and the more you share, the more you comment, the more popular my channel gets, and the more chances I get to receive loaners from different companies so I can do better tests, because right now I have to basically get everything myself. So once again, thank you for watching, and see you later.